We're in the afternoon, we're in the home straight, we're about to launch into the final furlong. Thank you so much for everybody who's contributing to all of the breakouts. The data from that will be incredibly valuable as we go forward, and we will use AI to turn them into insights and reports which will be shared with you. If you're interested to look at last year's, it's available on our website. So now the next session. The session is, of course, the future of finance. The session is led none other by the utterly remarkable Jana Pache. If you haven't met her before, you should meet her today. She consults with all sorts of organizations, some of them such as R3, but she's also led the Digital Pound Foundation work and your leading policy work there with helping understand what a future of a digital pound might like and to drive the adoption. She has a terrific panel with us, and so please let me hand it over to Jana Pache and her panel, and please would you mind to ask them to introduce themselves as well.
Thank you, Eric. I'm always overwhelmed by Eric's superlatives in introductions, but he does it to everyone. I've realized that. Okay, so I have an amazing panel, and it's a very full panel, so I am actually hoping to do as little talking as possible, and hopefully they will just all carry on a great conversation and argue amongst themselves. I'm going to ask you each to introduce yourselves very quickly, and without the life history, maybe just tell us a bit about your perspective on today's discussion. So what brings you here today and in what capacity? Nicole.
First thing I would say, I don't think Eric said all those things about me, so I would take it. Nicole Sandler, I'm what's apparently called a banking policy expert. I spend a lot of time in the policy space. I was former head of digital policy at Barclays. What does that mean? It means that I spend a lot of time with regulators trying to understand how to make the regulatory landscape fit for purpose for a lot of these frontier technologies. Under 20 seconds.
Fantastic. Alex Miller, I work at Citigroup in our Global Insights division, which is a de facto public think tank. So everything we publish is open to everyone. We work with our businesses across banking, wealth, consumer, corporate, investors, thinking about what the future looks like. In this particular case, obviously, the future of finance and all the underlying technologies behind it.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Bhavna Saurabh. I am Head of Payments, Product and Propositions at Santander. Principally, my role is about value creation, creating value for our customers and shareholders alike, and using newer technologies as an enabler for it.
Good evening, everybody. So my name is Travis Clark-Walker, Chief Commercial Officer for Thought Machine for the last 8 years. Thought Machine is a next-generation cloud-native core banking provider. So I guess in that period, I've been helping banks transform. It's not just about the core, it's the whole transformation agenda. Prior to that, nearly a decade at Barclays, where I guess I was MD for current accounts and small business banking before that. So again, the same agenda, really, trying to help banks transform both the technology and the customer experiences.
Thanks, everyone. And I guess just to set the scene, we're all so used to talking about the future of finance. We're so all used to, talking about how DLT and blockchain and AI are going to, create the glorious future of digital finance. But maybe, not everyone in the audience today is, as deep in the bubble as we are. So taking a step back, what are the frontier technologies that are driving change in finance, and how are they doing this? What are the kind of paradigm shifts that are emerging at the moment? And I'm going to start with you, Bhavna.
Okay, well, what can I say? I mean, technology to me is like it can do anything and everything, right? And for us, it's about the application of the technology. The one that I'm putting my money on is just really DLT and tokenization associated with that. And why am I saying that? If you look at the analog money today, it is riddled with, movement of money through messaging between different ledgers. And now that causes a lot of inefficiencies and I would say outcomes that are full of friction for the end users and all the stakeholders in the ecosystem. So, what do we have today? What can we learn with things that are happening around? And I would say, hats off to, Satoshi, who kind of thought about Bitcoin many, many years ago. And it's actually that technology, the DLT technology, blockchain technology, that actually we are finding a lot of those answers to the problems we are having. So some of the work that I'm doing right now as part of RLN, which stands for Regulated Liability Network, is using and harnessing that blockchain technology to solve exactly those problems about, that transparency, atomic settlement, programmability. And that is really, really exciting on it. And some of the couple of use cases that we are experimenting and piloting with revolve around, addressing fraud, APP fraud, which is rampant in the UK industry. And I'm a business person, so, I only understand technology from the point of what is the problem it's trying to solve for. And that's really what my anchor, because I need to go and ask for investment money to be able to play around with all this technology. And if I cannot land that context properly to say whose life is it going to make a difference to, what are the problems we're going to solve for. So the couple of use cases that we are looking at are really going at the heart of the problem that industry is facing with around risk, etc. And finding better user journeys, and home buying is another use case that we are looking at. So I would definitely say my money is on blockchain and tokenization.
Nicole, tokenization, Bhavna's mentioned a lot of the buzzwords there, but why should we, what is the point of tokenization? What benefits can we achieve from it?
Well, I mean, Bhavna's reference things like transparency, efficiency. So things like that come up in the tokenization space. Now, I'm not surprised you said tokenization, and it's not that I disagree with it, but I think the other technology that's getting a lot of press is AI. And I find AI really interesting, and if anyone's had the misfortune of hearing me speak before, I often quote my mum. So a number of years ago, I was doing a panel on AI, and my mum was like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, I'm talking about new technologies." And she went, "What new technologies?" And I said, "DLT and AI." I had to explain what DLT was. And she said, "AI, but I've watched The Terminator." And I think that's a really important thing, because we're talking about frontier technologies, and then we use the term AI, and DLT I think of as being slightly different. But AI is a technology that's been used in financial institutions and other firms for over 50 years. It's existed for a really long time. How it's used has differed. And obviously now with things like generative AI, it is different. But these are technologies that have been around for a long time and have been used for things like fraud detection, marketing. When you look at Gen AI, it's like things like content creation, summarization. So there are different use cases that can be used from some of these technologies. But it's taking the lessons you've learned from using these technologies before and making sure you're then using them correctly in a safe manner, safe and responsible manner, and deploying them. So I'm not surprised you said DLT, but it's hard to go to any conference and not mention AI as one of the frontier technologies.
I kind of want them to argue.
Maybe I could jump in there as well, just on the tokenization side, because I think all these technologies have incredible applications. Yeah. It was interesting to see Watford Football Club in the same league as my team is, Derby County, in the Championship, announcing the fact that they're going to tokenize, I think it was £2 million worth of digital securities. And why were they doing that? They said, well, we have a fan base that we want to grow around the world, and this is an opportunity for us to connect to them in a way that's very difficult to do currently. We're often approached by our alma mater, our university or college or school, saying, could you donate £100 or something to the new science block, the new theatre? We'll do that, often with no expectation of something in return, other than the fact you might get invited onto a webinar, back to a summer drinks event. You're creating a connection between that institution and you. And what tokenization offers is the ability to create an emotional connection with 6 to 7 billion people in a way that's very difficult to scale at the moment. So, for example, instead of donating to Oxfam or Save the Children or whoever it may be, and your money goes into a pot and you wonder how much of it lands ultimately where you personally want it to land, you get no choice today. Whereas actually in the future, Oxfam will Save the Children, or whoever, may be able to give you a whole range of offers. And you can say, I want my donation to end up in this country, in this camp, or for this type of technology. And you'll be able to follow it all the way through. And perhaps you'll donate more because your confidence in where that's going and your engagement's going to increase. So I think there's a lot of excitement around the potential for tokenization, which was still very, very early in inception.
We spend so much time in the technology kind of narrative without kind of translating it into the consumer experiences. What you're saying there is these are the consumers. This is what will change.
Yeah.
What will change is products will be personalized, customer journeys will be automated in a way that have not been automated before. And if we need to move it into what the experiential is going to look like as an outcome of these technologies, as opposed to just talking about the kind of underlying technology in the background, because it's overly complicated in front of the customers.
And the other jargon.
And it's all jargon. But the other point I'd make is that the transformation agenda is still very early in the banks. The banks are still, if you look at financial services at large, they're still running mainframe infrastructure, they're still on their own data centers. So even the adoption of technology that we consider to be kind of standard, cloud-native technologies, microservice architectures, this still needs to happen. So although we're talking about the frontier technologies, we also need to create the enablement landscape for those technologies to be deployed, and then we need to apply the narrative that makes them understandable to the end customers. There's a lot of work to do in that transformation journey, underestimated at our peril.
I always find it quite amusing when you'll hear CEOs of banks go, but we're a technology company. And I'm like, no, you're a bank that uses technology and you're doing other things within financial services. But you are a bank and there's nothing wrong with that. A technology company, to me, there's lots of different technology companies, but if I said, hands up if you were to think of a technology company, if a GAFA didn't come to mind immediately, so Gamma, Google, Amazon, Meta, Apple, I'd be very, very surprised. And firms use technologies, but I wouldn't say banks are technology companies.
And I think that narrative is very important, and part of what we need to do a better job at is explain it. Like, if you think of the megatrend of the aging demographic, means advanced economies are having to have the global south come and seek a better future. And what that is, migration. Migration is cross-border transfers, people sending back hundreds or thousands of pounds over the course of the time that they're in a different country. That's expensive. $50 a transfer is a lot of money when you're transferring $500. If you could take that down to 99 cents, that's kind of a real impact. And we're going to be able to do that with DLT.
Yeah,
so.
and I think it's not just also about the velocity of kind of getting that sort of payment back. It's also about inclusion. I think, for a long period of time, the banking model that we have, has left a lot of unbanked population. So I think one of the good things about, the more frontier technologies is making it more accessible for people to come into the banking system. But, I am a bit of a doer. So I think, I always believe the only way the banks are going to learn and get over this is by actually experimenting. And I think that's really where some of the work that is being done. You are a thought machine, you work with smart contracts, and I find that really fascinating, how you can program money and payments in a way that really takes a lot of manual interaction out, and because there isn't processes and workflows, which are completely built in it, that provides that atomic settlement.
It is a good example, and without it being a thought machine pitch, smart contracts enable us to build any financial instrument that exists in the world. So we have not found a single product that we can't replicate. And that brings accessibility and inclusivity in, because now products can be manufactured almost real time, almost personalized, and then made accessible at costs that were just unheard of previously. And when you then deploy into cloud infrastructure, the ability to scale up anywhere in the world is suddenly immediately available. Now, that's just one demonstration of, so you can build any product anywhere, deploy it at low cost, and make it available through the existing devices that are pretty much ubiquitous globally, and suddenly financial inclusion becomes something that is, pervasive as opposed to problematic.
I think the financial inclusion point is really interesting and really important. And I also think the programmability side that comes up with DLT smart contracts is super interesting. But I think one shouldn't forget that there will be some that could be digitally excluded. And so when you're thinking about financial inclusion on one side, and I do think it's really important and it is a problem that can be solved in some cases, you have to remember there will be a proportion of people who might also be excluded. And you're having to weigh that up and work out how you mitigate against that risk
Yeah,
as
and
well.
we're all familiar, of
Yeah.
course, if you have someone who's older, who perhaps is less comfortable in a digital context as well. I think also we don't have, big corporates on the panel here, but if a big corporate was here in the consumer space, they would say, we're always trying to expand our market, we're trying to get to new customers. And I love the idea of the latest acronym, DAO, Decentralized Autonomous Organizations, effectively smart contract-driven organizations where you can go out to your consumers and say, if you want to, you can choose to become part of the decision-making apparatus of our company, and you will get to vote on the naming of this product, the product that we choose to have you decide upon. Or maybe you're a sports club and you're going to be able to say, you can choose which player we decide to buy. We're going to give you a choice of 2, and according to the smart contract-enabled organization that we've created, the decision will be made as a function of that. So there's so much more you can unlock, which as yet, hitherto is not possible.
I think that's a real worry.
I think you're all painting a really glorious, vision of the future, and obviously there are challenges on the road to adoption. Travers, you've touched on those. Bhavna, you talked about banks and, that they can be quite, slow moving and they need to experiment. And there's also a need to go from experiment into a live environment, and I think that's the big barrier right now, and there's loads of reasons for that we don't have time to get into. You've all mentioned financial inclusion as a driver, and, for me, this is the work I do at the Digital Pound Foundation. We often hear about how a retail CBDC, central bank digital currency, could be a driver for financial inclusion. And my response to that is always, a retail CBDC in and of itself is not a driver for financial inclusion. The technology is not the barrier to financial inclusion here. It is the policy and legal and regulatory frameworks that are blocking financial inclusion in the first instance. And the technology can help us do things in different ways. The technology can take into account different means of credit scoring, different means of identity verification, and things like that. But only by changing the policy and regulatory framework around that can we actually enable adoption of that technology. And I can see you're dying to come in there,
So
Nicole.
I on one hand, I absolutely agree, and I often agree when you're speaking. But
on the other hand,
what I would say is it's not a one size fits all. We were talking earlier about the Bahamas as a use case for one of the first CBDCs, and the reason they did that was financial inclusion. I've never been to the Bahamas. I've heard it's lovely. There's lots of different islands. They couldn't get ATMs on all of them, and they wanted to have the ability to have public cash. And to do that, instead of having ATMs and financial inclusion, they went down the CBDC route. That would not be the same in, for instance, the UK. And it's not necessarily the same if you were looking at a digital euro. So I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all. I think the regulatory side is really important. I say that as someone that works in regulations, so that won't come as a surprise. But sometimes it's regulation and sometimes it's something else.
And the other question to ask is, what year are we in? We think we're in 2024, maybe we are, but actually, if you put it in the terms of the internet, what year are we? Are we in 1976, 1984, 1999, the peak of inflated expectations? I've heard some people far more knowledgeable than me in terms of the blockchain world say, well, actually, we're probably about 1984. And as if someone came up to you in 1984 and said, look, this is what TikTok looks like on this thing called a smartphone. This is the future of the internet. And you go, I can't even fathom that. And that's the question, is what we can't fathom. But that's why we obviously have to look at the underlying technology itself.
Yeah, so 20 seconds left, sorry. I can see Eric is starting to twitch over there in the corner. 20 seconds left. Sorry to cut you off, Bhavna. And I want to close with just one question to all of you. What are we seeing, in terms of the future of finance and all this change that it's undergoing at the moment, the impact of AI, the impact of DLT and blockchain, the capabilities that they're providing? Is it the evolution of financial services, or is it a revolution in financial services? Travers?
So look, I think it is, arguably it is an evolution. You can't revolutionize the industry. It's too big, it's too much scale, there's too much complexity in it. That said, the level of evolution that's going on over the next 10 years to this kind of almost where are we at in the internet age type of thing is massive. It's every aspect. AI will affect, all of the component parts, everything from kind of automated code development to risk engines to better customer experiences. So it's evolution, but it is a major transformation program.
Bhavna?
I think for me, I'm in the evolution camp too, only because, we don't have to always deliver new outcomes, better outcomes. We have to deliver sustainable outcomes that take into account a very diverse set of segments that, we as a financial industry is serving. So to me, again, it has to be considered growth and progress.
Well, I'll take both. I think it's revolutionary technology which is going to help the industry to evolve. And I think the challenge is how to marry the two and the expectations of both.
Yeah, so I would say it's evolution, but for those that want to perhaps get further ahead, they're going to have to work with some revolutionary firms to be able to evolve in the way that they want to.
I pretty much agree with what Nicole said. Thank you for being a fantastic panel and for making my life as a moderator so easy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, Jana.